I cannot go in the execution chamber and die in the execution chamber as a liar.
In 1989, a 51-year-old Richard Mallory picked up a prostitute along Interstate 75 in Florida to engage in sex for pay. A Volusia County deputy discovered his body several miles away from his abandoned car. That prostitute would be later identified as Aileen Wuornos. What happened that made her a killer, and to whom she said, "You sabotaged my ass"? Aileen Wuornos was born in Rochester, Michigan on February 29, 1956, and grew up in the surrounding Troy region to the south. During Wuornos' upbringing, her father hanged himself while spending time in jail for child abuse, and her mother abandoned Wuornos and her elder brother Keith, leaving them to be raised by their grandparents. Wuornos' grandmother, on the other hand, was said to be an alcoholic, and her grandpa a terrifying, vicious force. Wuornos subsequently revealed that her drunken grandpa had sexually abused and battered her as a youngster. Wuornos began bartering sexual favors for money, alcohol, and cigarettes while she was 11 years old. She gave birth to her sole child when she was 14 years old. Neighbors said the father was an older adult acquaintance of Wuornos' grandpa. The baby was placed for adoption. Soon after, she began to spend more time away from home, either living in the woods or traveling throughout the nation, frequently using aliases. Her family evicted her when she was 14 years old. Wuornos, who had previously been a state ward, lived a nomadic life as an adult, traveling and engaged in sex work to make a decent living. She was arrested for violence and disorderly behavior in the mid-1970s, and finally relocated to Florida, where she met rich yachtsman Louis Fell. The couple married in 1976, but Fell annulled the marriage soon after when Wuornos was detained in another incident. After Mallory, the naked body of David Spears, a 43-year-old construction worker, was discovered in Citrus County the following June. He'd been shot in the torso 6 times. Charles Karskaden, 40, was located in Pasco County a few days after Spears' corpse was discovered. The part-time rodeo worker had been shot in the chest and stomach 9 times. The same year, in August, Troy Burris, a 50-year-old salesman, went missing. Marion County Police Enforcement began searching for him, and his corpse was discovered in the adjacent region after a week of searching. Despite the fact that the corpse was fairly decomposed, the medical examiner determined that the cause of death was 2 gunshots to the torso. She was killing silently, and she was unstoppable. Fries, a retired Air Force major, police chief, and Florida child abuse investigator, was discovered dead in Marion County on September 12, 1990. The victim was completely dressed and had been shot many times in the head and torso. Humphrey's vehicle was subsequently discovered in Suwannee County. In June of 1990, Peter Seams, 65, departed Central Florida for New Jersey. On July 4, 1990, his car was discovered near Orange Springs. Though Seams' corpse was never located, witnesses in Orange Springs recalled 2 women near the car. Walter Antonio, 62, was discovered half-naked in a rural area of Dixie County on November 19, 1990. He'd been shot 4 times in the back and once in the head. 5 days later, Antonio's car was discovered in Brevard County. Wuornos met Tyria Moore in a pub in Daytona Beach, Florida, in 1986, and they began a passionate personal connection. Wuornos was in her second relationship with a woman when she met Moore. Her clientele, as a prostitute, were mostly middle-aged, lower to middle-class Caucasian men. Wuornos and Tyria Moore worked together to sell stolen things at Florida pawn shops. Wuornos and Moore abandoned victim Peter Seams' car after they were involved in an accident on July 4, 1990. Rhonda Bailey, a witness to the collision, gave police a description of 2 ladies, prompting a public push to find them. Some of the victims' items were also discovered at pawn shops. According to police, Wuornos' fingerprint, which was discovered on a receipt at one of the pawn shops, matched the print recovered in Seams' automobile. Wuornos had a criminal record in Florida, and prints of her were found in a database. A camera from Mallory's car was discovered inside a rented warehouse unit, which was opened with a key stolen from Wuornos. Wuornos had rented the apartment under a false identity. Other goods from Mallory's car were tracked down to persons or pawnshops Wuornos had contacted. Tyria Moore had been skeptical, if not entirely aware, of Wuornos' activities by 1990. Moore relocated to Pennsylvania with her family. When Wuornos was detained on an outstanding warrant at a biker club in Harbor Oaks, Florida, police tracked Moore down and used her to coerce Wuornos into confessing. Wuornos was arrested on an outstanding warrant on January 9, 1991, at the Last Resort Biker Club in Volusia County. The next day, police found Moore in Scranton, Pennsylvania. In return for immunity from prosecution, she promised to elicit a confession from Wuornos. Moore was taken back to Florida by police and placed in a motel. Under police supervision, she made many phone calls to Wuornos, appealing for assistance in clearing her identity. Wuornos confessed to the killings 3 days later, on January 16, 1991. She claimed that the males tried to rape her and that she murdered them in self-defense. Wuornos went on trial for the murder of Richard Charles Mallory on January 14, 1992. Although earlier convictions are typically inadmissible in criminal prosecutions, the prosecution was allowed to add evidence connected to her other offenses to prove a pattern of illegal conduct under Florida's Williams Rule. The Williams Rule states that prosecutors in the state of Florida may propose evidence of past crimes or wrongdoings when proving things such as opportunity, motive, lack of mistake means a crime was not committed on accident, but on purpose.
We were sitting on the floor watching TV, and she just come out and said, "I have something to tell you." And I asked her what, and she said that she had shot and killed a man that day.
During the trial, Wuornos' defense sought to bring evidence that Mallory had previously been convicted of attempted rape in Maryland and spent a sentence in a maximum security penitentiary institution for sexual offenders. According to records retrieved from the correctional institution, Mallory was committed for treatment and observation from 1958 to 1962 as a consequence of a criminal charge of assault with intent to rape and got an overall 8 years of therapy from the facility. In 1961, it was recognized that Mr. Mallory showed considerable psychopathic tendencies. However, the judge declined to enter the documents as evidence in court and dismissed Wuornos' plea for a retrial. Wuornos pleaded no contest to the killings of Charles Richard Humphreys, Troy Eugene Burris, and David Andrew Spears on March 31, 1992, claiming she wanted to get right with God. In her court statement, she added, in part, "I wanted to confess to you that Richard Mallory did violently rape me as I've told you, but these others did not. They only began to start to." Wuornos was sentenced to death 3 more times on May 15, 1992. Wuornos pleaded guilty to the murder of Charles Edmund Carskaddon in June 1992. She was sentenced to death for the 5th time in November 1992. Wuornos pleaded guilty to the murder of Walter Gino Antonio in February 1993, and was sentenced to death again. She was never charged with the murder of Peter Abraham Seams because his corpse was never recovered. Wuornos received 6 death sentences in all. She first claimed that all 7 men raped her when she was working as a prostitute, but then recanted her claim of self-defense, alleging robbery and a wish to leave no witnesses as the reasons for her death. When Wuornos assumed the cameras were turned off during an interview with filmmaker Nick Broomfield, she informed him that it was in fact self-defense, but she couldn't stand being on death row, where she had been for 10 years at the time, and wanted to die. Wuornos had a score of 32/40th on the psychopathy checklist, with a cutoff score of 30 indicating psychopathy. The checklist assesses persons based on a 20-item list of antisocial and interpersonal behaviors, with each item scoring 0, 1, or 2 out of a possible 40 points. Wuornos was detained on death row for women at the Florida Department of Corrections Broward Correctional Institution, then moved to the Florida State Prison for execution. In 1996, her petition to the United States Supreme Court was dismissed. She indicated her decision to fire her legal counsel and stop all ongoing appeals in a petition to the Florida Supreme Court in 2001. I killed those men, she wrote, robbed them as cold as ice. And I'd do it again, too. There's no chance of keeping me alive or anything because I'd kill again. I have hate crawling through my system. I am so sick of hearing this she's crazy stuff. I've been evaluated so many times. I'm competent, sane, and I'm trying to tell the truth. I'm one who seriously hates human life and would kill again. While her attorneys argued that she was not mentally competent to make such a request, Wuornos insisted that she knew what she was doing, and a court-appointed panel of psychiatrists agreed. In the weeks before her execution, Wuornos gave a series of interviews to Broomfield and talked about being taken away to meet God and Jesus and the angels and whatever is beyond the beyond. In her final interview, she once again charged that her mind was tortured at BCI and her head crushed by sonic pressure. Food poisonings and other abuses worsened, she said, each time she complained, with the goal of making her appear insane or to drive her insane. She also turned on her interviewer. You sabotaged my ass. Society and the cops and the system. A raped woman got executed and was used for books and movies and shit. Her final on-camera words were thanks a lot. Society, for railroading my ass. Wuornos' execution through injection took place on October 9, 2002. She declined her last meal, which could have been anything under $20, and opted for a cup of coffee instead. Her last words were, "Yes, I would just like to say I'm sailing with the Rock, and I'll be back, like Independence Day, with Jesus, June 6th, like the movie. Big mothership and all, I'll be back, I'll be back." She died at 9:47 a.m. EDT. She was the second woman in Florida and the 10th in the United States to be executed since the 1976 United States Supreme Court decision restoring capital punishment. She was America's first serial killer. The common thing among all killers and criminals is a ruthless death. Before dying, most of them rot in jails, and those who could not be caught by law hide for the rest of their lives before dying miserably. One wrong step could lead you to the wrong path forever. What do you think? Was she mentally disturbed? Was media to be blamed, as she said? Or she was trying to hide behind all this? Let us know in the comment box, and make sure you have liked the video and subscribed to the channel.